I'm Amy O'Ketty, Vice President of Government Relations. Thank you for taking the time to come out to see Chris Matthews. We are really excited. We're going to have a short, 20-minute after he presents, question and answer session. Before he speaks, I'd like to introduce the President of the University, Dr. Alan Sessoms.
Good evening, and thank you for being so patient. But it's warmer here than outside, so I really get it. I'm pleased to welcome you to the University District of Columbia. We are truly delighted to have Chris Matthews here with us tonight to give us his take on the outcome of the election. I guess most of us know what happened, but he's going to maybe explain it, sort of, better than Gallup did, that's for sure. And it's gratifying to see so many of the friends of the university. I've seen many of you here for other occasions. I'm delighted that so many of you have come to participate in this event. Hosting figures like Chris Matthews on campus is just a part of how your university is taking advantage of our central location here in the nation's capital. We're just, as you know, a few steps away from 20-plus foreign embassies. And if you head down Connecticut Avenue, we are sort of rolling into the lawn of the White House. So one of the things we're trying to do is take advantage of our location in the capital of the free world, and we want to make this university a part of that experience. I'd like to especially thank our VIPs. By purchasing a ticket for tonight's event, they went over and above because it's free for everybody who didn't purchase a ticket. You are supporting a great initiative here at the university. That's the Congressional Internship Program. Each semester, the Congressional Internship Program provides our students with an opportunity to serve as interns on Capitol Hill. Students earn academic credit while picking up real-life experiences, if you can consider anything that happens on the Hill real life. It's really kind of a different kind of place. But most importantly, it really gives extraordinary students exposure walking up and down the halls of Congress, and lets Congress know that there are truly extraordinary individuals who are students at this university. It makes Congress realize that UDC is more than a metro stop, which is incredibly important for us. Before I ask Amy to come back and introduce Chris, I want to personally thank her for putting this together. She didn't know Chris Matthews too well, but she's very persuasive, and that's kind of neat for us. Not only is it great that she's able to bring a top journalist like Chris Matthews to campus, but she did it on almost no money, which is an enormous feat. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and be with us tonight. Enjoy the event, and be sure to stick around after and get your book signed. He likes to sign it. I've watched him. It's pretty good. So as long as he's not here all night, it should be a good time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Sessoms. Our guest tonight needs little introduction. Chris Matthews continues to be one of the most respected and knowledgeable Washington insiders. After working as a speechwriter in the Carter administration and then as a top aide to Tip O'Neill, he then moved on to journalism, where he has enjoyed an award-winning career. On top of all this, Chris is a New York Times best-selling author. The last time I saw Chris, I was at a First Lady's reception, and I asked him, everybody was asking him to come speak wherever they worked, and I asked him if he'd come to the university, and he said he would love to. So let's give a warm welcome to Chris Matthews.
Thank you. Wow, I can almost see you tonight. Thank you. Well, look, you all know everything. I mean, you guys know, you're at school here, and you're on top of all this. I want to just go through a couple of the surprises. You know, the president was at the Al Smith dinner in New York a couple weeks before the election. He made fun of me. He said that first time I ran, I gave this guy a throw up his leg, and after that first debate, I gave him a stroke. So that's about true. I almost died after watching that first debate. What is this? This is the worst kind of rope-a-dope. You want to lose? I don't know what was going on that night, but he came back. Biden came back, didn't he? I mean, they all came back. And I thought it was an amazingly sort of good election for the country. Everybody seemed to vote, which is always a good sign. A lot of turnout. I mean, I'm interested in a couple of turnouts. African-American turnout in Ohio was fantastic. It went from 11% of the electorate to 15%. Just a big jump that really probably made the big difference out there. Young people vote. I was skeptical about young people in their first years of voting showing up the second time. They voted for Obama with a lot of historic enthusiasm the first time. I thought they wouldn't come back and do it again. They did. Picked up a point. Hispanic voting, the Democrats used to say Latino, Republicans said Hispanic. I don't know why everybody's saying Hispanic now, but I'll say Latino. That vote went up to 10%, which means with all the people in this country who aren't documented, and the people who, their kids are all going to be documented, their kids are probably going to be political, become more political, and the more they see they have an impact on the elections, the more they're going to vote. So that community is just going to grow and grow in their importance in this country, and that's one thing the Republicans have to keep an eye on if they're going to stay in the game. What else? Women, as always, were the most prominent voters. The majority of people who vote in this country are women. It's astounding. There's a lot of people. They're always amazed that, holy cow, what's going on here? There's more women voting than men, and it's always true. And it always surprises these guys, you know, like, oh, it happened again. It just keeps happening. One reason women live a lot longer. First of all, you go to an old folks' home, there's usually like one guy there. You know, and he's very funny. Everybody's laughing at his jokes, and he's got gigantic ears, and we can never figure that thing out, but it's something about the ears keep growing, and the guys keep getting smaller. But there's only a few of them, so they're popular, but women always say, you know, I really care about Social Security. Men say, with any luck, I won't need it. You're right. You probably won't need it. But women live a lot longer, and that's why they care about Social Security and Medicare and those issues a lot more. Women tend to care more about their older parents than men do. I'm not sure what men do worry about, because women worry about their kids at school. They worry about their parents. They worry about what their health care is covering, what their insurance covers. They worry about how to feed everybody in the house. They worry about education. What do men worry about? Oh, I forgot. Make sure there's a gun in the house. I guess that's what it's about. Anyway, so I want to talk about what I do for a living is argue. When I was like some of the people here, I was in college, and people would say I was arguing Matthews, and I found a way to make a living at it. Arguing is a good thing. And when people say I don't like all the noise on television, all the political argument and all the screaming back and forth, I say, well, get used to this country. Because from the time we began in the beginning, back in the 18th century, we were fighting about things like, should we stay as part of the British Empire, or should we break away and become independent? You know, when Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense, he was making an argument. And 300,000 copies of that pamphlet of his got around. And, you know, by that July in Philadelphia, that year in 1776, they all read that pamphlet and it said, let's be independent, and they did it. He made his argument. And when we had the Constitution, of course, I'm reading the Constitution again. It's always important to go back and read this little book and what it said about people. And I find one of the earliest arguments was about black people in America and how they should be treated. And this is how it reads it here. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within the Union, according to their respective numbers. Well, that makes sense so far. Which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, and then the rest, 3/5 of all other persons. Isn't it interesting the way they referred to that, to people who were slaves? Just casually mention other persons. Well, that was the biggest argument when we started. The people who wanted that in, the people who didn't want that in, who didn't want slavery. And so that was the first big argument. We had abolitionists fighting. John Brown, I always thought he was a much better man than his. By the way, make a point sometimes of reading his last words when he's about to be hanged. That's a hell of a speech that guy gave. Of course, he was treated as a traitor at the time. So we fought that. Lincoln came to office. Everybody was scared of his argument, which was we can't outlaw slavery, but we can stop it from being expanded in the territories, which means eventually we'll kill it, because we'll have enough free states in the territories, and we'll have enough to pass the constitutional amendment and get rid of it. And of course, when he got elected, the first thing when he got elected, the South seceded from the Union because they saw which way the Union was coming, which way the country was headed. That was a great argument. Did anybody see Lincoln yet? The great thing about Lincoln, by the way, Tommy Lee Jones stole that movie. I love him in that movie, especially when he showed up and realized what was going on with the housekeeper. I just love it. Because I knew that. I knew that they were more than just, the employer and employee, that they were lovers. In fact, and really lovers. She wasn't a slave or anything. This was a free relationship. That is a great story. I've always loved Thaddeus Stevens because he understood that Reconstruction had to be economic and not just civil. That if there was going to be true Reconstruction after the war, it had to be 40 acres and a mule. And probably if you do the math on 40 acres and a mule, what that would be worth if you had gotten 40 acres and a mule back then, what would it be worth today? We want certain 40 acres, of course, like how about Beverly Hills? I'd like that 40 acres. I don't care about the mule. Just give me the 40 acres there. But I mean, there was a concept he had which just don't free slaves, but give them capitalization. Give them something to start a business with. He understood that. And that was the sort of the most, they would say radical, I would say developed thinking at the time. And it's so interesting to see how this argument, of course, the Republican Party of that day, which isn't the same party as today, but on this they're really bad. They said we'd rather be president of the United States in 1876 than continue Reconstruction of the South. They just made a decision to throw away Reconstruction in the South and let the South go on to Jim Crow for another 100 years rather than fight for that issue. They just wanted the White House, and they gave it away in 1876. And then, of course, that new century, the 20th century, began with the big argument about women's rights. Women's rights were 60 years behind African-American male rights, if you think about it, because at least African-Americans on paper were given the right to vote after the Civil War. The women were not given the right to vote until almost 60 years later, which is an interesting delay if you think about it. And that came about by 1920. Women could vote. Of course, unfortunately, they voted for the guy that wasn't the smartest or most honest candidate in the world, Warren G. Harding. He was good looking, just a thought. Not a good first test of women's suffrage, but it worked out all right eventually, obviously. But I love getting into trouble quickly. So all our history is just people say, I wish things would calm down in this country. Well, they're not going to calm down. We're going to be arguing about gay rights. We're arguing about what to do with people who are documented. We're going to argue about immigration for the next couple of years. I think the president has right now, having gotten reelected, roughly a year, maybe a year and a half, before it all closes down again. We have a congressional race 2 years hence. We have a presidential race 4 years hence. So he's got a window he's looking at, like Lincoln was in that movie, looking at a window right now of all the things Obama has to get done. He's got to deal with this debt ceiling cliff that's coming up, the cliff that's coming up January 1st. He's got to deal with the immigration issue eventually, and I think he's pretty well smart to do it while the Republicans still realize they just lost an election. They better do something about it. He's got to do something about that. He's got to make health care work, not just be on the books, but it has to work. I think he's got to figure out how to implement it effectively and as cost contained as possible. These are things he has to do. The government has to prove it can work. And one of the burdens on a Democrat is you're the governing party now, but you're not only that, you're the government party. You're the ones that believe in government. You've got a special responsibility to make these programs work. The Republicans, in many cases, the Tea Party types, would love to see everything come apart. They love incompetence and waste and big spending, because then they can say the government's a disaster and they can win their arguments. Democrats have to go in there and say, wait a minute, we have to prove that Social Security works as an economic prospect. We have to prove that Medicare can be actually financed in the future, and that Medicaid will be financeable. They have to make these cases. They have to win an argument for some fair, progressive immigration policy that can actually be enforced. They can't just throw something on the books and make a joke of it, like Simpson-Mazzoli back in the 80s. They have to have a plan that they intend to enforce. And so Democrats, I think, especially have a burden on them to make government, to prove to people that government can perform and be the kind of government we need in a complicated century. So I think there's going to be a continuation of arguments as long as we live. And right now I begin to worry because I think that John McCain, for example, he seems like one of those people in a war that doesn't really know the war's over yet. You hear about the Japanese guy on an island somewhere, and he hasn't been watching television the last 40 years or 50 years, and he's still got his gun ready to catch the Americans. And sometimes I think he's been fighting now ever since he got beaten by W in 2000. He's fighting this war against Susan Rice. Of course, the New York Post called it fried rice today. They're having a lot of fun. And this war is going on. Hillary Clinton is not in this fight, but somewhere behind it all. We're all thinking Hillary's probably going to run for president next time, which looks like a really interesting race. Hillary Clinton against, I'd like to see a good race. I don't want him to run a clown. So I want Chris Christie to run against her. I want that race. Well, he makes everybody else look skinny, first of all. That's a good thing. He's also got a sense of humor, and he also understands you deal with a problem when it's at hand, you don't play politics. He's now doing 72% approval rating in New Jersey right now because he dealt with the storm, and everybody else is running around thinking politics. He said, no, I need the president's help right now, and we're going to work together, and they both look good. This country is dying for some kind of cooperation between the two parties. Dying to see it. They want both parties to represent their principles, but what they can't stand is stupid arguments that end up in being just dysfunction. And so when I hear my progressive friends on the left say, we're going over that cliff, we don't care, or I hear the Republicans say, we're not going to give an inch on our latest commitment to Grover Nordquist, I begin a little angry. I say, wait a minute, who are you really pledging your allegiance to? The country or something else? Ultimately, your responsibility is to your oath of office, to the country, and some kind of workable government. I worked for Tip O'Neill, as Amy pointed out, for 6 years during the fight with Reagan. We fought every single day with Reagan. Every day we fought with Reagan. I was on the phone, I was listening to the newspaper, reading the paper, we're listening to everything, scared to death that Reagan was beating us. In 81 he beat us, in 82 we beat him. In 83 was kind of a draw. By the end of his presidency, we were doing good things together like tax reform and immigration reform, and things were working because there was a kind of a respect there by both of them of each other, and things began to work. So I think we're never going to have a 60-40 Democratic Party rule in the United States for as long as we live, maybe. Maybe at one point we might, but generally it's going to be around 52%, 53% now for the Democrats this year. Last time around it's about that way for the other side, and in 10 and 14 it'll probably be about 1 point leading Republican in the midterms. The next election might be, if Hillary runs, probably a little advantage to the Democrats. But it's never going to be a 60-40 country. So we got to live with the fact that we're going to be about 50-50 between the two parties for years to come, which means we got to get rid of this crazy filibuster thing that goes on now. It slows down everything. And we have to find a way of regularly engaging in compromise, both parties coming from their points of view, and engaging as grown-ups, recognizing that the ultimate goal is a functioning country. Now, can we get the lights up so I can see people? Is that possible? Who's in charge of the lights? I actually see people. Thank you. Well, there you are. There you are. Well, is there anybody up there? No. Everybody's down here. Well, good. I want to take questions because it's what I do best. It's what I like to argue. And don't be afraid to attack. And I'll answer your questions. So why don't we do some of that now? Yes, sir. Well, basically, the Senate sets its own rules. The question is, how does Harry Reid, the Democratic leader, the majority leader of the United States Senate, end this history, this pattern of filibustering? Now, let me tell you, there's two kinds of filibustering. If you ever saw the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, it's about one guy up against a corrupt political machine at home, and he discovers huge political corruption back in his state, and he's fighting the political machine, which the whole United States Senate seems to be endorsing. He goes up against it, he stands there all night for 13 hours or whatever, and somewhat makes his point. But what they do today is all a senator has to do is basically put up his hand and say, I object. And they stop everything on that bill and start talking about some other bill. So you can stop any bill you want, or you can put, or she can say, I want to hold on that nomination. For example, watching this fight over Susan Rice today, somebody like John McCain or Lindsey Graham or Kelly Ayotte up in New Hampshire can say, I've got a hold on that. I mean, they don't really bring it up. So what they're going to try to do is say, now, if you want to filibuster, you can only filibuster a bill, not a move to proceed with the business. You have to actually say, I am filibustering it. You have to go down on the Senate floor and begin talking. And you can talk, as we say in Philly, you can talk as long as you want to talk, but you have to be there. And then the question is, since we have C-SPAN today, and everybody's watching it, you probably have to say something relevant to the issue or you'll look like a fool. So you can't just go up there and start reading the Bible or reading the Constitution because the people start laughing at you. You have to make, it seems to be, arguments. And so if it's something really important to you, like suppose you opposed health care, you're a conservative, that's a good thing to filibuster, it's important to you, make your case. But you're going to have to keep making it. And so I think that we're going to have real filibusters, not just these things where I put my hand up and nothing can go forward. So all he has to do is this. It's a great question. He moves a change in the rules, or he moves to have end of debate or something, a change in the rules, and the parliamentarian overrules them. And then he has to get a vote of 51 senators to overrule the parliamentarian. and it's called the nuclear option, and just change the rules right there. And they expected that fight will be just a direct decision by the Democratic leaders. They just have to say, we're now going to challenge history. We're going to challenge the history of the filibuster. We're going to act as if this is a new body, the Senate that meets in January. We are a new body. We can create our own rules, and we're going to do it by majority rule. We're not going to sit around and wait for 60 votes to do it. We're going to do it by nuclear option. And so that's going to be the hot day. Will they actually stand up, 50 Democrats, mostly Democrats, and actually do it out of the 55 Democrats? Will they actually do it? And that's a question in the end, because the end have always talked about it. Richard Nixon tried to do it back in '57, back when he was a civil rights guy, before he changed and took the Southern strategy, when he was actually in the NAACP, and he was actually pushing that to get rid of it. In those days, the liberal Democrats opposed him. They were supporting their segregationist friends in the South. And so we'll see. I'm skeptical, I'm hopeful. Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing, Chris? My question has to do with campaign financing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Aren't you glad it didn't work?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that's a lot of money. And I personally don't think, just to preempt some of your thinking,
Sure.
I don't think people look at TV commercials in the general election and decide who to vote for president.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you could go, well, that was an important commercial. You know, I mean, It seems to me you'd make up your mind. But in the primaries, I think the big money that Romney had, he could smash people like, well, maybe he should have, but he smashed people like Newt and what's that guy from Pennsylvania? Santorum. Some people call him sanitarium, but anyway, your thought.
yeah, but anyway, my question was, I met you at the Kennedy School when I was a fellow there some years ago, and I remember Lamar Alexander was there as well. And we did a seminar on campaign finance, and the idea he was talking about when he first got into politics, how if basically you ran on your record and you ran on what you had done in the community, and people knew you by your deeds. And now it's almost like if you get enough money and enough publicity and make basically a bunch of 30-second movies that are really
And
good.
they're paid for by you don't know who now.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Citizens United.
he saw this as a great danger, and I do too. And I just wanted to know.
Well, I think it's the courts. I think when people pick the president, we just got to keep putting it into our head. It's not about personality.
Right.
You know, I voted Republican at least once for president. I'm not saying who it was. I'm kind of embarrassed by it. But, I mean, you have to keep reminding yourself that you're picking the Supreme Court.
Right.
And in this case, I'm not saying they're bad people, but this is a pretty conservative court right now. And they're pretty open to money. And they're pretty open to the idea, like George Will always writes, dollars or money or free speech. Somehow the more money you got, the more free speech you got.
Yeah.
And I think it wouldn't have happened under the Warren Court, this idea that corporations can spend this money, that you can have unlimited spending the way they're doing it. You know, John McCain, back when he was a real reformer, really tried to end this, and they just cracked him. And I do worry about it in this case. Apparently, you could go into a congressional district where the person would normally get reelected and throw a ton of money the last 3 weeks into a local congressional race where the person who's the incumbent isn't ready for it, and you can blow them away. You can do it. Because they just hit him with all the stuff. They had some voting thing he did 10 years before or something they could twist and just throw it at this guy or this woman, and they can blow him out of there. And that's what a lot of these guys and women are afraid of, that someone will just come in, what they're called self-financiers. But today you don't even have to be a self-financer. The Tea Party people and the Koch brothers and people like that, and this guy from Vegas, he makes more money in, a day out there in Macau and China than they make in Vegas on the Strip every day.
So you think
he has unlimited money to spend.
Do you think it's just a trend?
Oh, yeah.
Trend, yeah.
Oh, yeah, look at the guy in Pennsylvania, that guy, Smith. I look at, but it's not new. We've had self-financiers before, people with money, J. Rockefeller, Lautenberg. You got people I can think of that have a lot of money that have been able to just spend it in campaigns. That had the guy in Corzine in Jersey spent $70 million. He's not in a very good place right now, actually.
No.
His career didn't work out as well as he thought, but I don't know. You got to trust the people in the end. If they pay attention and they make their judgment, that they'll see through the money.
Okay, thanks a lot.
I do think the ads on TV are really awful, and I like a couple of them. I like the one that Obama's people did called Stage, where the workers described how they had to build the stage where they could announce that they were being fired. I thought that was pretty macabre. You know, we had to go build the stage. We found out what it was for. We all got up on it, and they fired us. That was a pretty good ad, because it was true.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Somebody else.
Thank you. Over here, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
My question is, being that the Republican Party lost this election pretty bad, what do you think the direction they have to go to make this midterm election better for them, as well as what do you think they should do to please the younger audience?
Well, I think a couple things are going to happen. They naturally benefit, as you probably guess, in midterm elections, because people don't vote as much. People, a lot fewer voters, small electorate, older, more white, you know, more wealthy. People that vote, my parents, not wealthy, but they've never missed an election. It was like going to church. They just never missed it. They voted in all the primaries. They voted every year, and they never missed it. And a lot of Republicans vote like that. They just take it as a religion. They vote relentlessly, you know, and Democrats normally have to be excited to vote. You know, this is great. I can't wait to vote. Well, Republicans say, I guess I got to vote. You know, I always say they come to the movies about 15 minutes early and for the movie to start. They're very organized. But I always say if you get to the movies early and they're sitting there with their little candy bar, that's a Republican. And if you see somebody barging in about 10 minutes late with a giant box of popcorn and a jug of Coke, and that's one of your Democrats. You just guess that's the way it is. It always worked that way because there are more Democrats. They could come late, but now they got to get a little earlier. Now, Republicans are very organized, so they show up in these elections. That's why these guys like Scott Walker won that race, and they love special elections, because then hardly anybody shows. But let's have the election in March, or let's have it in August. Let's have it a surprise election, and then we'll get more votes. But Democrats do well in presidential elections. So if you ask me if the Republicans are going to change, I'd say not radically. Will they benefit in the next election? Yeah, because it's a midterm, and they can blame everything on Obama again. But what they have to do, they got to pay attention to issues like student loans, pay sharp attention. And Tip O'Neill always said all politics is local. It's about your life. They got to be real careful about abortion rights. I mean, sure, there are a lot of polls that say abortion's morally wrong. I'm with them. But outlawed? Got to think about that one. And Republicans say outlawed in every case, and you know, rape and all that. Then they say, is it a real rape or legitimate rape? And how about dropping one word from the vocabulary? Rape. Just don't say it again. It doesn't help them. They on gay rights and same-sex marriage. I think young people are totally with that agenda, much more than older people. I've evolved. I love that word. I have evolved, but I have, you know. And in fact, I go to all the HR human rights events, human rights campaigns events. I've been emceeing them just to get the kudos here for that. Where's the applause now? Okay. So kids are, young people, I mean kids in their 20s tend to be very pro-gay. They don't even know what the issue is. And on race, they don't even bring it up. A lot of times it never comes up. It's too ethnic. People don't talk like that. I mean, kids don't say the teacher's black. It never comes up. You know, the kids come over to play with them when they're kids. They don't even mention the kid's black. It doesn't mean anything. At my age, they would have mentioned it. They would have mentioned it. And today, it's not that it's not seeable or noble or important culturally, but it's not a divisive issue. Sex, gender, ethnicity. I don't even like to say race, ethnicity. These things are really evolving with kids who get a pretty good education. The kids, part of getting a good education is thinking bigger and better. And but on the issue of the Republican Party, I mean, they've got a real problem. The Tea Party people are not here to make government work. They're here to make it not work. And they go home, and if one of them is, you just put your arm around a Democrat, you're dead. You hug, you're dead. You hug, you die. This guy, Charlie Crist from Florida, was defeated because he hugged Obama. It's that simple. They do not want to have anything to do with Democrats. They don't have anything to do with Washington making it work. They might as well just mail in their nose. Just mail it in, save the travel, you know? Just say I'm voting against everything. And I think that their bosses are the people back at the next Tea Party meeting, some guy in the back row yelling. That's the one they're afraid of. The guy, hey, you sold us out. I saw you talk to that guy. You voted for something. You're a traitor to our cause. That's what they got to deal with. And that's what poor John, maybe that's why he's crying all the time. You know? Boehner's got to deal with that crowd. You know, imagine, he says it's like carrying frogs in a wheelbarrow. How's that for an image?
Thank you.
So my answer is they better get their act together. And what it'll be like Jeb Bush And Chris Christie and people like John Kasich and people like Tom Ridge that I grew up with and Bill Scranton. And I grew up with the Republican Party having senators from every northeastern state. Javits and, I mean, these guys everywhere, every state there was a Republican senator. They used to be moderates. In the South was all segregationist Democrats. So the Dixiecrats all switched to the Republican Party. That's brutal, but true. And the guy who said it was going to happen was Lyndon Johnson. And it did happen. And I'm not saying every time a Southerner votes conservative, they got a race problem. I'm just saying that change in '64 made the Republican Party a Southern party, and it began to exploit white resentment, and they built a whole political base around it. And they got to keep that base happy. By the way, you know what the white vote went like in Mississippi for Obama? 89% for Romney, the white vote. Now, the black vote in Philly did the other way, you could argue, but that's probably because the first African-American president, I can make a lot of historic reasons why that vote would be the way it went. The white vote in the South, explain why Alabama was 85% for Romney. 85%. You know, he wasn't the first white guy to run for president. He was really white, though. Okay? Not that there's anything wrong with it. I'm not answering your question, am I? I'm not going to help you rebuild the Republican Party.
Thank you.
But thank you. Yes.
My name is Li Yang. I'm glad that you just mentioned to begin with the argument. The problem is in this country, you don't have a chance to argue because they shut down your mic, they take away your right in a town hall meeting or public hearing meetings, or they even temper your website or voter's guide.
Really?
So there's no really freedom, there's no really...
But you're talking right now.
This is a chance, that's why I try so hard everywhere.
Yeah.
This is the chance we have, but you don't know whether I go out, I'll be kidnapped.
You'll be kidnapped if you
I
talk?
may be kidnapped or sent to prison. So we have a prison complex, we have a financial bailout, we have military industrial complex, but we don't have freedom. We have NDAA, there is not for the security reason, and we have all those bad legislation which is just a propaganda to divert the resources to benefit a few. But we have people who are poor, power, they don't care.
How did Obama win?
Obama win, but he still listen to the supporter who didn't give the voters the voice, or they didn't have a chance for voters to listen to the argument. They just say you go to vote, and when they got the power, they got the money for themselves rather than for general public. So I just wonder if you can really change this argument for general public to be able to speak, to be able to listen. Now we don't have a third-party candidate forum. We don't have any democratic forum. There's no such freedom. And everywhere they just even talk about media. They say media is useless, maybe even worse than just useless.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if
Well, that's a harsh indictment.
So I don't know.
It's very harsh.
If you can just be...
What about MSNBC? Don't you love it?
Well, that's why. That's why.
I'm not kidding, but why you don't... let me ask you this. You can't... What do you watch in the media or listen to in the media that you respect?
The media should report...
No, what in there? No, don't generalize. Be specific. What don't you like and what do you like? Or you don't like anything?
I would like to have a media...
No, what today is free in the media that you think is free?
Today, the media is upside down. It's not working for the people. It's not just to give the information.
Which media do you mean?
Probably...
What do you watch?
Now, I don't really like to watch media, and a few probably...
I understand. Look, you feel alienated. I can't help you right now. But I would try to listen to some of it. Listen to Sharpton at night, somebody on the progressive side. Listen to Rachel. I'm here to advertise, but it works. And you have to listen. You cannot judge.
Let me tell you.
You cannot say the media as if you're speaking about all of it because they're fighting with each other.
Let me tell you this. The media, if you have something, a few people can really say something maybe the medal or somebody, but even the Al Sharpton, if he has a town hall meeting, they obstruct people to speak.
They do?
They do. That just
Which one was that? What meeting was that?
The recent town hall meeting.
Which meeting did Al Sharpton have where you weren't allowed to speak?
About a Trayvon Martin case. And they have town hall meetings.
Okay.
The problem I'm asking you is see if you can really ask, since you know a little bit like insider and you know the local and federal, see if you can really promote this opportunity for people to speak.
I get it. But I think it's better than that. But I hear you, and you got a point. I will not forget you. And you made a point tonight which is very good for people like me to hear. There are people in this country who feel like they've been shut out and shut up. But you weren't tonight.
Good. Thank you.
Hi, Chris. Thanks first for coming to our school.
Now that's interesting. The people, you know, that have the deep feeling of alienation is so much. There are a lot of people in this country who don't vote at all. They've never voted. They just feel that it's all elite, and they feel that the parties are working together. And this is not BS, and it's not just missing a point here. She has the point. It's a number of people that have really gotten. They voted for Ross Perot. They find some way to vote if they do vote. It just votes negative, And I understand it. And the people like me ought to keep hearing from them, not just the people who are engaged. Okay.
Oh, my question for you is, before you had mentioned Democrats implementing policies like health care and that they really had to get behind them and make sure that they work. What do you think it's going to take for them to get them to work? But also, what is it going to take for the people to understand that these programs are good and that government can at times be trusted?
Well, look, this is the thing about it. The president is a brilliant man. I don't claim to be at his level. But I do believe this, that he is not an excellent salesman. He's good at selling Barack Obama, which it works, and he should. But he never really made the right kind of down the middle case for health care. Health care, the way he set it up, was very much the way Hillary Clinton wanted it done, which is the way he opposed in the primaries, which was independent individual mandate. Now, just to get the whole history straight about this, the philosophy, that we could have a whole class on the philosophy of health care. Since Teddy Roosevelt, the progressive, the greatest, maybe the first of them all, said we have to have national health care. Nixon, who people have, I think he's a mixed bag, but everybody says he's evil, but I don't think it's that simple. He was pushing employer mandate. He was going to make it a law that every employer in the country who hired anybody had to have a health care plan for them. Very simple. You must pay insurance for health care for everybody who works for you. People like Kennedy didn't jump aboard because they didn't like Nixon. There were a lot of opportunities missed over the years. Obama comes along, and instead of pushing the Canadian-style plan or the German-style plan, which is national health care, national service like in Britain, he said, okay, we're going to do it through the insurance companies primarily, and we're going to do it through self-reliance. So if you're on a motorcycle and you get in an accident and you come in, they'll still take you in an ambulance, and nurses and doctors will treat you because you're an emergency case, but you will by then have contributed $5 a week, $20 a week towards your health care. So I always say to people that say they don't want health care, I say, well, do you want somebody to pick you up if you get in a crash? Or do you want some, put a sign on you, leave me alone? What are you talking about? Somebody's going to have to do it, and somebody's going to have to pay for it. So you want to participate in that or not? So I would argue the first thing Obama should do is he had a very conservative health care plan. It was very much based on self-reliance. It wasn't socialist. It was, you got to kick in according to your ability. I think you got to do some of the education like that, get some of the fear out of this thing. The things like the death panels and all that crap. I mean, he already get that out of people's heads. Stop diminish the antagonism and hostility towards it. He hasn't done that. Maybe because that's the way of keeping the progressives happy. Oh, we're really doing big radical stuff here. We're all together. Maybe he's trying to keep them happy. What he ought to be doing is keeping the middle of the road people happy, the regular labor people. Saying all this is doing is saying everybody's got to do something. You can't just walk in and get free. And by the way, anybody here has been in an emergency room. It is not like in the movies where you come wheeling in and into the operating room and everything goes moving. I had malaria once. I was 2 hours before they asked for my papers. And that was a good hospital. Emergency rooms are just a bunch of people waiting. It's like I was going to say the DMZ is the DMV. But and you put time in. You put your day in. Right. So I'm making an argument that salesmanship's a very big part of it. The stuff I do, I think you should do it. You never did what I just did. Make the conservative case for Obamacare.
That's what Clinton's for.
And it was from the Heritage Foundation that came. And Bob Dole was for it. And Howard Baker was for it. It was not a left-wing European, that's the new word by European plan. Let's go. Are you from Kenya or Europe? Where are you from, buddy? You know, the weird way they go after this guy. Donald Trump is still out there, by the way. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Matthews, I'm a big fan of your show, and your book is great. I love
Which
it.
one?
Jack Kennedy.
Thanks.
I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, PA.
Great.
Just a couple hours near your hometown. My question is about a theory that's been raised a lot by people on your show.
Did you go to King's College?
No, I went to, I'm in college at GW, but I went to high school at Wyoming Seminary in Kingston, PA,
Oh, good. I know
right
it is.
outside
I know where it
Wilkes-Barre.
is, yeah.
All right. My question is, there's a theory out there, one that I subscribe to, that President Obama is kind of like the Democratic version of President Reagan in the sense that in the way Reagan put us on a conservative trajectory for 3 decades, President Obama is putting us on a progressive
I
trajectory
think so.
slowly.
I
You
think so. And let me tell you why. I mean, I engage in humor because it keeps people interested, and I tend to think humorously because I think life is so ironic, so much of it. You look at this election this year, if you're watching it from abroad, like you're writing for The Economist or somewhere, the BBC, and you go, what happened in America this year? Well, they voted for legalization of marijuana in a couple states, and they voted for same-sex marriage for the first time. It was not the courts, but the people, for the first time ever, voted pro on same-sex. They voted in California to raise taxes statewide to pay for education. So I said, this whole country is voting like the West Village. You know, it's Greenwich Village voting. I mean, it's such a liberal swing on these issues that have always been iconic. You got to, what's going on? Now, following the election every minute, almost like I do. I get up in the morning at 7, I make my wife the coffee and a latte or whatever, and it's Kathleen Matthews, you know. And I got to do it right. And I start reading all the papers, even the free one, that Washington Examiner, the right-wing paper. I read them all, because I like to, you know, it's easy to start with the less intellectual press. You don't want to start with the New York Times. It's like running up a hill the first time. How about a little downhill for a while? So you read the less intellectual press like that, and the Washington Examiner, which actually has some good columns in it. And I love their page 6 nonsense. But I read it on, and I thought this country was going to vote for Romney. I just sensed it. I sensed all this terrible attitude in the country and the racial thing that was played so brilliantly with the dog whistles and all this terrible stuff aimed at white working people and relentless stuff about food stamps and welfare and getting rid of the work requirement. Endless dog whistles from the right. It never stopped. And they'd say the president's lazy and the president's this. The terrible words were used by Sununu and Trump, and they never stopped. And I said, this country might have what we call a Bradley effect, which is that white people say they're going to vote for a black guy like they were going to vote for Tom Bradley in California, and they don't do it. They lie. Well, last time around, more whites voted for an African-American president than said they would, the pollsters. They were more embarrassed, perhaps. It's a wonderful thing. I was so proud of the whites saying, you know, we're better than we thought we were. You know, we thought we were awful. But they voted positively for the best candidate. He was a much better candidate than McCain, objectively. And then McCain was sort of over the hill. And this guy was smart. He had everything going. He was going to be a can-do president. And this time around, I think they made a judgment was sort of cultural. They sort of saw, I think, they probably saw women, I think, saw Romney as 1953. You know, Father Knows Best or something before that. Something white in Pleasantville. Something like that. You know, something boring. And yesterday, and they didn't. The women looked, I said, no, that's not the good old days. And blacks said, that's definitely not the good old days. That's not my days at all. And they said, I don't like that world you're talking about. And they kept saying, take back America. And he kept saying, for who? Yeah. Who are you taking it back from, and who are you taking it back for? And they kept saying these, and we, of course, show that over and over again when he'd say, take back America. And they said, yeah, I'd rather keep it myself. I'd rather let you take it back. So the message was about generation. It was about ethnicity, race. It was about age. It was about men versus women, men and women in the kitchen, men making all the decisions. It just looked like that. And so the voters sort of came back with a kind of a mellow view of, you know, we're a little bit socialist, a little bit. We're not all rugged capitalism. We like programs like health care, and we do like Medicare, and we do like Social Security, and we want to help poor people when they need help. We don't want to give it away, but we want these programs, safety net. The people are much more, what's the right word? Compassionate, mellow. They're just not right-wing crazy people. They're not rugged, outlaw abortion, throw them in jail types. And on immigration, I understand that somebody's been here 20 years. They're not going to send them home. It's crazy to talk like that. You're not going to take grandpop and throw him home while the kids are crying at the border. It's not going to happen. That's why I keep talking about it. You're only playing to the racists out there. They think you're actually going to do it. It's not going to ever happen. Get with it. So, long answer, right? But I get your question. It was somewhere before all that. But I really do think this country has really made a statement that it's more of an Obama country than a Romney country. It wasn't just a split decision. I think they really made a decision. And when the fact that Heidi Heitkamp can win in North Dakota, the fact that Virginia can vote for Obama, the fact that North Carolina, a state I went to grad school in, I'm so proud it was so close they almost did it there. Almost did it. That Florida went for Obama. That's pretty impressive when you figure the number of white Southern conservatives that are not on the same page as most of us are voting there. But it was overcome by the other voters. And it's pretty impressive that John Tester won in Montana. Yeah. That it's not so hard for Clara McCaskill to win because she's running against a certified nutcase. But it was impressive, these votes, especially California voting to raise the taxes for education. You know? We'll see how the weed thing works out. I don't have a big vote in there. I'm still a little nervous. I say, not the guy flying my plane, and not the guy operating on me, and now who do we want stoned? Nobody close to me in traffic. So I'm not so sure about that. We'll see how that works out. But I'm a little old for that one.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hi,
Thanks,
how are you
Dave.
doing? Thank you for coming to our school. I know
Thank you for having me.
political science, all of us political science majors, we're all like having
Political science, my God, an oxymoron.
Yay.
It is an oxymoron. There is such a thing, huh?
We're all having like mini heart attacks because you're here, so thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, how long do you expect the American media to continue to like perpetrate this Benghazi situation and talk?
Well, it's not the media. It's
right?
about it's a lot of Republican senators, including Kelly Ayotte, and tonight on our show, Susan Collins from Maine, and they're not all nutcases. I mean, these people they've got, the problem of this thing is, from what I can figure, nobody wants to come out with a simple, clear, understandable statement beginning with what happened to that facility. Was it a CIA facility? It wasn't a consulate like they said in the beginning. Was it a CIA operation? Who was there? Why was it targeted? What was going on that we couldn't come out with a clear statement when Susan Rice came before Meet the Press, no shows? Why weren't they able to just come out with a clear statement? Why not clarity? And I always say about politics, if it's better than it looks, they'll tell you. If it's better than it looks, they'll tell you. And they haven't told us, so it's murky. And I just can't, and I think the Republicans are different motives. But I don't think Susan Collins is a bad person, or Kelly Ayotte. I don't know what they're. I think they just want to get a straight story from somebody. So is it going to be I think it's going to complicate the president's decision. I don't know. I called Jay Carney last night. He said the president hasn't made up his mind about who to make Secretary of State. Now, all the press is floating around that it's already been decided, but they always say it this way. He prefers Susan Rice. Right. Well, what's that? That's kind of a soft word. Who's he going to pick? Okay. So we don't know. And I hope he doesn't get it complicated with this thing. Now, he may have made it complicated by going on TV and really getting angry about it, where he has to make her Secretary of State to show he's macho man. That's the question he has to answer. Was that what he intended to do? If he'd already decided to pick her, fair enough. But he hadn't decided. If he hadn't decided to pick her, now he's in a position where he almost has to. And that's the tricky situation politicians shouldn't put themselves in. Right. It's a political move. He's in a political situation. Now, I'm not his advisor, but I said on TV, separation, like we say in the NFL, separation. Decide this thing's over with and then pick the person. But he's got to get this over with in a couple weeks because he's got to deal with this. He's got a couple weeks. No news story stays going too long. Right. And by the way, John McCain, as Rachel pointed out today, has been on the Sunday shows 22 weeks this year. He does like this. Yeah. McCain does like being out front. Okay. Thank you. But I understand where you stand, and I'm not sure where I stand on that one right now. Okay. I'm trying to learn it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm so glad you're here today, and I really admire you speaking out for progressives, really.
Thank you.
And I like to call them liberals. That's what
liberals is a good word.
Yeah. I brought.
What do you got in there?
I brought you a gift.
Oh,
It's
swag.
a hat.
Swag.
It's a hat. This is a swag for Free DC. This is for DC statehood. It's just like mine. Just like mine. It says free DC, statehood now. I want you to wear it sometimes. Don't wish us good luck. You're going to help us too, right? Wear it sometimes, especially when the president's around, you know. You know, just to remind him, because he did tell me personally when he was being endorsed at AU, I think, you know, that he supported DC statehood.
Yeah, they all do.
So he has like a window.
That'll be all right. Just stay young, ma'am.
I'm not even young anymore. I'm still
there's always a lot more in this one. This one's going to keep going.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be sarcastic about it, but it's going to be a good fight.
Yeah.
Look at it. You know, I don't want to talk compromise. There is a compromise, but
what is that?
let her vote.
Well, let who vote?
I want her to vote.
Oh, that's part of it.
Let her vote. That's a compromise. Let her better be a real member of Congress. Say she's from Maryland. What matter? Just recession or whatever they call it. I don't know. That's a compromise.
Right. And
I don't know. You can maybe it's the first step. Maybe it's the last step. I'm not at the battlefronts like you are.
But it comes with statehood. Okay.
I know it does.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
Mr. Matthews, one of the first things you said in your book, Elusive Hero, was you wrote it because you wanted to give people a sense, let people know how Jack Kennedy was like, or what he was like. Getting a sense of knowing what he was like, having written the book, what do you think he would tell Obama, President Obama, facing the challenges he's facing of his time?
Well, they're similar guys. They're both very, you know, kind of, what's the right word? Cool. In the 1960s sense, cool. Cool in the sense that they're not like John Boehner. You know, they're not showing it. They are very self-contained. Neither one of them are one of the boys. They don't hang out with other guys. You know, big gang. They're not like that. They are thinkers and readers more than one of the boys. You know, they're really men of, I'm sure that the president's ideal evening is probably a really good book. You know, after he's hanging out with his daughter and his wife, he goes to retreat somewhere to a really nice room. And I think that's his idea. I don't think it's a great idea shaking hands and hanging out with congressmen and senators. And it wasn't for Jack, but they both, to various degrees, have to learn that you can give every couple nights a week to your kids. He's got teenage kids, but he's got to give a couple nights a week to the pals.
Mr. Matthews, if I just may, when you wrote that book, it seemed like Jack Kennedy was always hanging out with his boys and his crew from Harvard.
Well, he was at the White House. He had, well, I don't want to get into some of the extracurriculars. He was very segmented. You know, like the Titanic, each compartment was sealed off from the other compartments so the ship wouldn't sink. Well, he had a compartment where he hung out with guys who were totally faithful to their wives. Ben Bradley and Charlie Bartlett and Red Fay. Then he had other friends who he would mess around with. They'd be his partners. He liked double dates, right? Yeah. And they were other groups, and they never knew each other really. And then he had Jackie. Then he had serious relations with women, and he had other relationships that weren't serious at all. He had, I think, something like love affairs a couple times that I've been able to find. So he was a guy who lived in compartments. And but the political part of him was very proud of the fact that he was a professional. And then he really appreciated the fact that he knew how to get elected. He knew how it worked, how to be tough with other guys in the back room. I would say the one thing that Obama could use is a brother. He doesn't have a brother. Bobby Kennedy was unbelievable. And one of the heroes of my book is Bobby Kennedy. Because from the time he saved Jack's life in 1951 when Jack was dying of Addison's disease in Okinawa, when they were over there together, and Jack always thought his little son was sort of a little pill to hang out with. And he realized he was totally loyal to him and he was going to be his protector. It's a great moment. And then later on when they had to fight these guys like the governor of Ohio and the governor of California and all these guys, they're all Catholics, but they're afraid of a Catholic president. Bobby would go in the back room with these guys and they'd come out of that room for Kennedy. And it's kind of scary what he did in those rooms. But Bobby was one unbelievable brother. And he also got into the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't know who's the president's brother. I don't know who is, or sister. I mean, who's in that room with him saying, you got to tough this one out. You can do this one. You know what Bobby said to him when he went in to debate Nixon the first time? Kick him in the balls. That's pretty cool. So get yourself a brother. That's about all I can do. I don't know. Anything else is just psychobabble.
Hi, Mr. Matthews. First, I'd like to say that you are truly professional, and us at the UDC David A. Clark School of Law really appreciate you coming.
Oh, thank you. Good luck in the law. I'm going to have to shorten these answers to about 3 words now because I'm getting the call here. But go ahead.
Okay, so my question is, we now, as you know, there's a big case before the Supreme Court, which could restore rights back to the southern states that was restricted back in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. How do you think, if those rights are restored, how will they impact voting in those states? And do you think?
Well, I fear them. I fear them because although you're going to be an attorney, you're into the case, but I do fear, based upon 30-some states this year engaging in voter suppression, when you have a systematic effort, like in my state, Pennsylvania, where you have requirements, like they set up a photo ID for people that don't drive cars. I grew up in a working class neighborhood as a kid. When I was very young, nobody had a car. My grandmother never drove a car. My grandfather got a license when he was 65 or something after he retired. There's just tough, packed-in row houses. Not everybody drives. You lived in the subway. You got around the subway. So the idea you had to go get a driver's license or something like it and go to the 3 or 4 places where PennDOT has photo operations, that was it wasn't working. And that's one reason that case was thrown out. In Florida, where Bill Clinton said it was the most blatant case of voter suppression, black people would go to church on Sunday and they'd go right from church to vote the Sunday before Election Day. People like to do it that way. It was a social event, I guess, a ritual. They wiped that right out. They systematically went in and said, that's where we can kill a lot of black voting. Let's kill that. And Clinton said that was a clear case of purposeful suppression. And so as long as that's part of their strategy, and they're doing it in all these states at once, you got to figure that the states that are under voting rights are going to be part of that. Florida.
Do you think they'll overturn it?
I don't know. What do you think? You're the expert. I don't know. I'm not being sarcastic. You probably know. This court could do anything.
I think that
this court.
I think the Chief Justice Roberts surprised us. He
surprised us on Obamacare. You probably know more. I'm still hopeful with Judge Kennedy, with his notion of the Liberty Clause coming out of the Lawrence case. You just better be surprised. He might go with that Prop 8 vote out in California. Don't you think?
I think so.
Because he's surprised. These civil libertarians can be real civil libertarians when they put their heart in it. They're primarily libertarians. Scalia is always, he's still reading a dictionary from the 1772. What did they mean when they come up with that word? He's trying to figure out their meaning. God.
Thank you.
Good luck in school.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi,
I met you earlier.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Matthews. Thanks for coming.
But you had me autograph your book earlier so you could leave, and now you're still here.
I know, I couldn't leave. You're so entertaining. But my question is, as you sit behind the desk as a commentator of Hardball, as watched by millions of people, what is your goal in terms of shaping public opinion as a political commentator?
Well, say what I think. There's a Yiddish term, tumler. That's me. It's a tumler is this guy, he's usually a guy, he's Jewish. He would show up at the mountains up in the Catskill resorts. On a rainy day when nobody had anything to do, he'd show up. And he'd keep everybody excited. I'm a tumler.
Okay.
I excite people on purpose.
Thank you.
But on a serious basis, I never say something I don't believe.
Right.
And I try to write it. I'm a writer, really. So, I get up and I write. I write the opening of the show, the close of the show. I rewrite some of the other stuff. My cold open is my favorite thing to write every night. The frying of Susan Rice, because something like that is a headline, or something that causes trouble. But it's engaging people. And the one thing people know when they watch me who I am who I am on television. There's no personage that comes in and speaks with, "This is Washington, the nation's capital." I don't have that voice, or ground transportation, now leaving for Reagan National Airport. I'm not an announcer, a freaking announcer. It's me that's on television.
Right.
And so people that come up to me, they get 6 inches from my face and they say, "Thank you, that's all I want." And I get it from people of color because they're so ticked off at the crapola that was thrown around this year. and I hope everybody heard it didn't work. I'm glad that it was a 40% white vote for Obama, that the working class voted the same way they did for Gore, the same way they did for Kerry, the same way they voted for Clinton, about the same. There wasn't any big race difference. And I'm also proud that nobody raised Romney's religion. Nobody ever gives the Democrats credit for that. Nobody played cheap shot on this guy being Mormon. Nobody. There was no Donald Trump on the Democrat side. You know, if this had been a Democrat, what would have been Trump doing? And his clownish behavior is just, he's got a beautiful wife, he's got billions of dollars, he's got smart, good kids. Why is he so ridiculous? Why is he so angry against Obama? He's still trying to find some transcript somewhere that says he's a foreign student. He's still, it's like, I don't know, some lost crusader. Anyway. Let's finish up.
Hello, Mr. Matthews. My name is Monica, and my question is over the House congressional races. Earlier this year, we were incredibly optimistic that the Democrats were going to win the House.
Well, you are optimistic.
I was optimistic.
Because, you know what a lot of it is. It's just, a lot of these seats are very hard to defeat. It's beating incumbents is very hard, very hard. Very few got beaten. 90% reelection rate, right? It is. That's what you got to look at. So time takes a long time to change. There's only a few suburban districts that are swing districts anymore. How many swing districts are there? 50? Well, you got to win 40 of them to get a 40 is 10, a 30-seat change. Anyway. Keep trying for your interest. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Matthews.
Yes, sir.
My name is Jose Mercedes, a student here at UDC, and once again, I would like to thank you for coming over to our university. What is it about Obamacare that Republicans hate so much? That's what I like to know.
Well, they think, because they've been scared into it, that it's socialized medicine, and they don't like socialism. I give you a short answer, and that's the story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your book, Hardball. I learned that politics is local, and I was just wondering if you could give me a suggestion. I'm an aspiring author, so I just wanted to get a suggestion on what I could do to...
You want a job? Look, what did she say? I give you advice, read a lot, write for small websites, get some print examples of how good a writer you are, write for Huffington Post. Get in the door that you can get in, and get a lot of stuff together. You have a pile of 5 or 10 things you've written you're very proud of, and start shopping them around with people.
Okay.
It's writing ability that is your best strength. If that is, there's some people in my business that aren't writers, but the ones who are writers are the good people. And you got to read. I always say to kids, read your butt off. Read. That's the only way to learn to write. There is no other route. You have to learn. When I was a Capitol cop, the first job I got in Washington after I was in the Peace Corps in Africa, I got back. The only job I could get was Capitol cop. It was a patronage job. I'd work at night as a cop, 3 to 11 shift. In the daytime, I'd work in the office. And I would hide down in the tunnels of the Capitol reading the Congressional Record. And I'd read this boring stuff over, so I learned how to write a speech. That's how I became eventually a presidential speechwriter. And I just reading. People think I'm a show-off business, show-off kind of out front kind of guy. I was, for years, writing for other people, for a couple senators, for President Carter, who I really think was great, and Tip O'Neill. I spent years writing for other people under their names.
Thank you.
I'm bragging. Woe is me. Thank you. But that's the best advice I can give you. Call me up if you ever, ever thought about something.
Hello, Mr. Matthews.
Yes, sir.
My name is Paulo Sosa, and I have 2 small questions.
Sure.
First of all, I would like to know, I've been hearing a lot about the amount of money both candidates have wasted for their campaign.
Yeah, I think they have.
And I don't know if I'm being a little bit naive, but can't you get free publicity and use that?
Oh, yeah, it's called free publicity.
And use that money?
No, you can, and use it for what? I'm sorry, because most campaigns are run on free press. You go give a speech, it's covered. You go, you talk to reporters, it's covered. You create events, press conferences, rallies, you get covered. You write op-ed pieces for newspapers. You get people who are friends of yours who write letters to the editor. You do local radio because radio has to be refreshed every 2 hours, and they're always dying for something new. I always say to people, if you go into a campaign, go to the radio right away. First thing you do is hit radio because they got to refresh every 2 hours. They're desperate for copy. Give them something on tape. keep giving them out. Identify with a local changing issue. Always find a local issue. Education, some kind of disaster locally, anything that's local. Get involved in the debate over that local issue, and the press will begin to pick you up. I'm telling you, these are...
And then why is so much money...
Well, I'm just telling you how to do it free.
Oh, okay.
These are pearls of wisdom. I'm telling you how to do this. This is how to do it. You can write it out, and you can go pick up the local paper right now, and you can read 4 or 5 articles about a local story. And you write a letter to the editor under your name about those issues, and you will be in the newspaper that week. You will begin to create an identity. It's doable, and it's not hard, but you have to do the work. And you can do it. You can get into a public debate. And then you can write longer articles about issues. But you got to tie into local issues. That's what people care about. That's where newspapers are today. If you want, pick up the Montgomery paper, the papers around the suburbs here. Even the Post is trying to survive, if it does survive, on local news. And you got to get in those debates. Because people care about which way that Route 66 is going to be expanded. Are they going to put the subway there or over there? Those are the issues that people fight about.
And my second question, what is Obama going to do with education? I've been seeing throughout...
I don't know. Arnie Bunker's this guy. I haven't seen the program. I know that he cares a lot about it. And I'll tell you why I know it, because it's how he got there. It's how the Clintons got there. What distinguishes the Clintons from anybody else in the world? Not their pedigrees, not their daddy, not their mommy, not their grandparents. They went to really good schools and did really well. And that's why they're who they are. That's what separates them from the Bushes and the other people. They got through meritocracy in academic surroundings. So they have to believe in it. I got to take these, but thank you. Sir.
I might be wrong about this. But if I remember correctly, when Obama made his speech at the convention, the Democratic convention, I think you were the first one to say that may be one of the presidents.
I said he'd be the first black president on the spot.
I thought you said that.
And I say that as a guy who was just as dismayed by that name of his as anybody. I said, how's a guy Barack Hussein Obama going to be president of the United States? When I first heard the name, I go, what are you, crazy? Joe Smith, yeah, Joe Brown, yeah, maybe, but Barack Obama, what? And then I heard that speech, 2004. And then I did something that most people didn't get a chance to. I traveled around with him, not just as a person, like in a room, smaller room than this, like in schools in Iowa, and I felt the electricity. That man, he doesn't do it since he's been president. He had something about electricity that when he talked about the country, and I was so disappointed in W and that war, and the stupidity of it, and the way the country fell for it. Just felt like a guy of limited ability, and the country said, yes, Mr. President, we're going to war. I was so disappointed in the country, and he comes along with this clear notion that it was wrong, it was stupid, and he spoke just brilliantly about what it means to be an American, and when he said, only in this country is my story possible. He talked about how a guy with a white mother from Kansas, he didn't talk about his grandparents being alcoholics. He didn't talk about the problems he had growing up, like Clinton did or Reagan. They all had alcoholic parents. They had difficult childhoods. And he inspired me about what it means to be an American. When people make fun of me about the throne of legacy, I wasn't rallying to him as a person. I was excited about what he was saying about our country. It still had potential to be the ideal it was supposed to be. And so you're right, I nailed him right then. I said, this guy's the first black president. Now, I didn't say when. He could have been 85 years old, but I mean, I did think when the time came, this guy would do it, because he had the spirit of an immigrant and a black American. His background's not exactly African American. Michelle's is, but his isn't the usual. It's a white mother and an African father. He didn't grow up with the slavery backdrop, the heritage that came with that. He came this other way, and so he managed to combine the immigrant experience, like people who come from the Caribbean, with a black being black, and I think it's really striking the way he put it together.
Just one other
He's such an interesting guy, don't you think?
Yeah, yes.
I think he's just interesting. I don't know whether you can put him into an ethnic slot and say black. Of course he is, identity is black, but the way he looks at the world, he does seem to look, although he's comfortable with fellow African Americans, he's comfortable with everybody. He has a tremendous scope He doesn't seem to have any limits to who he can connect with. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like Oprah's like that.
Yeah.
Oprah's exactly like that. Oprah's amazing at connecting with everybody, and that's a gift in this country that's been so segregated, terribly segregated.
Just one other question. I think when the partisanship really got itself together with Newt Gingrich, when he came together with his contract with America.
Yeah.
I just want to know what you think about that.
Well, I think Newt sold that contract after he got his people elected. I don't think they read that contract. I think it was a great marketing technique. You couldn't ask anybody what's in that contract, but people like to know there is one, that there's some set of commitments. Newt is one brilliant revolutionary, by the way. He puts Fidel to shame. I mean, this guy can walk into a room and do all the self-indignation stuff. He plays all the cards. He knows how to demagogue brilliantly. You know, he's amazing at it. I mean, a lot of people in different communities are good at it, and he's good at it. He's pretty scary. He also can be charming if he wants to be, Newt. But that food stamp crap of his, he knew exactly what song he was singing. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he was quite willing to do it in that primary season. And we called him on it. He's gone. One more, sir.
I'm enjoying your book. Will you take a question from an old Duke Blue Devil?
Sure.
I'm still haunted by 3 dates in our history. Dallas, November 22nd, 1963, April 4th in Memphis, June 4th at the Ambassador Hotel. Do you feel that the murders of these 3 men, JFK, RFK, and Dr. King, either symbolized or caused a fundamental shift in our country?
I'm absolutely convinced that the first one, I know exactly where I was all 3 times, as you and I know. You never forget it. And the first one was the real shocker. By 68, we knew the country was in turmoil. And King, he saw it coming. He talked about it. I won't reach the promised land, you know. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be Aaron, I'm going to be Moses. I'm not going to get there. And the Kennedy thing, still, I don't think anybody who's not my age or our age would know what we're talking about. I think to be at college like this, to be a freshman at Holy Cross where I was in Massachusetts, and to have a kid tell you Kennedy's just been shot, and to go over and watch Cronkite all afternoon is unimaginable. It's just unimaginable. The young, good-looking guy, beautiful wife, everything's going for him, riding through with the flowers in his hands, and just absolutely the most confident situation you can imagine, and then gone. And in an hour, he's back at what the White House dead at 6. It's all over. He's back. It's over. The funeral's Monday. And I think it was the most powerful, public day of any of our lives. And I don't think anybody knows what as my son Michael is so smart about these things. He said that, he's 30 now, and he said that Jack Kennedy took the Democratic Party, which was a segregationist party, and made it a civil rights party. He, the one guy, did it. Up until 52 even, John Sparkman was from Alabama. He was the vice presidential nominee of the Democratic Party, was a segregationist. I'm not saying he's born evil, he's a segregationist. And the party was still running people like that. And all the South was segregationist Democrats, except for Mike, 1 or 2 exceptions. And he comes along, and Mrs. King calls up Harris Wofford, the great Harris Wofford, and Louis Martin, who's African-American, and Harris Wofford get on the phone, they get to Kennedy, they go around the Irish Mafia, and they get him to call Mrs. King. And history's changed, the one phone call. And then the word went out to the black community, and the blue bomb, 2 million copies went out that Sunday. And all of a sudden, the Democratic Party is the party of black America. It had been 2-1, but then it became 9-1. It just went overnight because Nixon wouldn't do anything. Nixon had Jackie Robinson as his big buddy, and Robinson left the Nixon train crying because Nixon said he didn't want to do anything. Nixon was still trying to get the white vote in the South. He wouldn't lift a finger. And Kennedy calls up the judge. Bobby goes, sees the judge. He gets through the governor. He gets him out of jail. King out of jail. It's pretty scary times. Mrs. King, and she was pregnant at the time, thought her husband was going to be lynched. Turns out it was more complicated. Actually, we're trying to take him to a safer prison because they thought he might get lynched out of the jailhouse in Atlanta. But it was a couple people. And I always say why diversity is important in an office. Because if you have people around you like Louis Martin, a publisher from Chicago, African-American guy, and you have people like Harris Wofford around you, they get to you and tell you what you ought to do. You can't count on your own instincts in the world we live in. It's too complicated. You need friends and allies who walk in the room and say, wait a minute, you shouldn't say that. I once said the other night that, a couple weeks ago, I said I was going to talk about how this president needs Confederates. You need allies? And one of the African-American guys who works with me said, you can't use the word Confederate. People in the black community will think you mean Confederates. So don't use that word. I mean, it's a little thing, but don't use that word Confederate. And you have to have people around to look out for you. And thank God Kennedy didn't just have Irish guys around him. You know what I mean? And so he turned history around, and then he gave that great speech on television when he said that civil rights was as old as the Bible, as the Scriptures, and as American as the Constitution. He just said it. People watched that, just couldn't believe it. For the first time in history, the President of the United States is on their side in June of '63. Changed everything. History changed then. And then LBJ followed through and did it. Great history to live through. But all the tragedy with it. I always say I love the 60s, and I try to remember I shouldn't say that. But I did love the 60s. But all the tragedies, and I still loved them. How can I say I loved all these assassinations? But I did love the 60s. Because these guys were doing things. They weren't sitting around on their hands like the 50s were. They did things, and they stuck their neck out, and they paid for it. But I'm glad you remember all those dates. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me come here. And you're a great audience. Thank you.
Chris, you clearly cannot answer a question in 3 words.
I don't want to.
We want to thank you for coming, and we have a small token of our appreciation.
It's a pretty big token.
It's a UDC bag.
What's this?
Everything's UDC in there. Little notepad.
Oh, that's nice.
There's a T-shirt in here from the students.
What size?
Extra large.
Good, that's the size. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
He used to be a senator from